welcome back to my channel, 3 Degrees of Love. This is your girl Alana here. So I just wanted to do a quick intro to this upcoming video. So I recently had the pleasure of sitting down and doing an interview with Malumir Logan for her wonderful creation, which is the Chakra Healing Tarot deck. I think that this is such a gorgeous deck and such a great resource for healing and spirituality and self-worth and self-healing. And so that's why I wanted to not only highlight her deck, but also, sort of talk with her about her journey creating the deck and, how, we can use the deck, to better help ourselves and not only to grow spiritually, but also to take care of ourselves, mentally speaking as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you to my channel and this interview. I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you want to see more of these things, please by all means leave a comment down below in the description box. Hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully we can build a stronger, healthy community with a beautiful healthy approach, connecting spirituality as well, and sort of living from that life of love. So in the words and the honor of 3 Degrees of Love, continue living, listening, and learning. Sending you guys lots of love. Till then, take care. Enjoy the video. Bye. All right, thanks. There we go. Got it. All right, so hi, Malumir. Thank you for joining me on my channel today, 3 Degrees of Love. So welcome back, everybody, to my channel. Just doing an interview here with Malumir Logan, who is am I pronouncing that right?
Malumir. Yes, Malumir.
Malumir Logan.
Yes, you got it.
Sorry.
All good.
Who is the creator of this wonderful and beautiful deck called the Chakra Healing Tarot. And the one thing that I was really looking forward to, like, as we were just talking earlier, was the fact that I had a reading done more recently for my it was Akashic Records reading, actually. And one of the things that was talked about for me to focus on is working and doing some balancing work with my chakras. So I remember too, when I had when I got the deck, I was like, yeah, this is, anything to do with, mental health, spiritual growth, things like that, is all of the things that really sort of, attracts me to, self-empowerment and bettering ourselves and things like that, especially when we're going through such a difficult time. Like, I feel like I've sort of been on a self-development journey for quite some time now, but even more recently, with this sort of global pandemic we have going on with COVID and everything, people are doing, when you're having to self-isolate and, you're staying at home, this is like the really good time. You're in that sort of hermit mode to really do, the work that, so many of us probably take for granted, put off
a lot of the time because we're so busy, right? And even now that as we're trying to get back into the swing of things, you know, with life and, you know, and sort of just moving on there, you know, we don't want to fall back into the same old patterns. So, you know, I think your deck came out at a perfect time, you know, and is definitely something that I look forward to working with, have already, you know, started working with. And, you know, it's definitely something that I want to, you know, to keep and hold dear for, you know, that kind of work. It's so of course, you know, in developing my spiritual journey and stuff like that, you know, I've been acquiring a lot of decks, but this deck and the Reclaim Oracle are two of the decks that I think I've even tried combining and working with the both of them together, and they are extremely powerful. So, you know, Malumir, can you tell me okay, so let's start with how did you get into spirituality? Like what sort of, where did you begin with all of that?
Yes. So I will say I have always, I've always been very spiritual from the time that I was a young child. From the time that I was a child, I had spiritual sight. And sometimes that was actually pretty scary as a really little kid because you know, I could perceive energies and I could read people like a book, right? I would look at adults around me and just be able to figure out exactly what was going on. And so, you know, that kind of spiritual comfort, and I guess comfort with the fact that I could always perceive more than what was there physically, has always been with me. I will say that. In terms though of my healing journey, because, you know, I had all these spiritual abilities as a young child, but, you know, unfortunately, I experienced a lot of trauma, as many of us do, in my childhood and growing up. And so, you know, what is very common that happened to me, which is that some of the spiritual senses, they need to defend you, right? You need to be protected. And so they can almost become a little bit hardened or a bit shut down, just in an effort to protect you. And so while I did remain very spiritual and had relationship with the divine throughout my childhood and adolescence, and you know, I moved out as soon as I legally could, I continued to have relationship with the divine. There were a couple of moments in my early adulthood where it was so clear that that spiritually that there was more, and I needed to keep searching and to find whatever it was. What I think I didn't realize is that it was actually really, and it sounds like a cliche, but it really is about finding yourself, coming back to your own power and your own personhood and just who you are, who you always have been. And so I'd say over the past, in particular, the past about 14, 15 years in particular, it's been a really more concerted kind of journey spiritually. And I must say that where I am now with my spirituality, it actually does feel like being home, but in a way that I'd actually never experienced before in my life.
Wow. So so it's funny because actually even yesterday as I, you know, was thinking about, you know, our discussion and, you know, getting together and, you know, to discuss your deck and stuff, I was thinking a lot about, and this is actually going to sound really funny. So actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of the show called Miraculous, The Adventures of Ladybug and Cat Noir.
No,
So,
I haven't.
okay, so it's I guess the setting is in Paris. And I think initially when the show was written, it's a French like cartoon or whatever,
Okay, yeah.
but it's become popular and whatever. Anyways, so they deal a lot with like they have these what they call kwamis, and they're all these like little tiny magical creatures, and they all have different special powers. But then there's also like so each particular sort of power has like some sort of charm that goes with it. So for like Ladybug, the idea of a ladybug is, she has ladybug earrings, and then when she's ready to transform, that's how she transforms.
Okay.
And somewhere along in the show, in more recent episodes, I was like, so there are people who are born with gifts, and then not to say we don't have gifts, but I meant like sort of enrooted in knowing exactly what they're doing, right from the get-go, can see and all these things. Whereas then you have, or at least how I interpret it based on the show, is then you have those that come here and are not, based on whatever their life journey or whatever, they somehow become chosen ones.
Okay.
To sort of, to develop their spirituality. They go on this sort of long journey where you have some of them that are already in tune right from the get-go with, that sort of higher internal wisdom and being in tune with, in line with that. And so it sounds like in this sort of scenarios we're discussing it, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, so she must be the born into it type of one. And now, because, being more like I grew up as a Roman Catholic. That was, what I was born into. And yes, there's a certain level of spirituality and all of that kind of stuff within religion. Well, this is my take on it, of course. And I'm like, but the way that I sort of see Christianity, or even the idea of religion, is that the religion aspect is what is man-made, what we, the rules and whatever that we take from whatever and sort of, use to, as a sense of control.
It's like the structure that we put around it, the construct.
Yes, exactly, right?
Yeah.
But so for me, in my development in with Christianity, I always had this sense of feeling that there's more to what I know. And feeling like, in my journey, I've reached to a point where there's the glass ceiling. And I feel like with the teachings and the things that I've learned, it's been limited. I know, there's greater out there.
Yeah.
But excuse me, my access to it falls a bit short. And I think more recently, maybe even last year, is when I suddenly felt like I started getting this inkling to continue and find out more, right? And I think I've had little inklings of that throughout my life, but I would say in more recent years, it's when I've really sort of wanting to do that deeper dive. And it's almost like I felt like I've sort of found the opening or the crack in that glass ceiling to sort of break through. And now I'm on this whole other journey that's like, and sort of developing and bringing more awareness into all the other aspects of spirituality, tarot and oracles, and how, using all of these as tools can help me and how I grow personally within my own practice, how I see the world, how, so it's really been, quite something. So it just sort of reminded me, I know I totally went on a different tangent there, but
you know what? I think you make some important points though, right? And the thing is that I I mean, the household I grew up in was a very right-wing Christian conservative type of home. And I will be clear that it was an abusive home, but that is separate from the religion, that is separate from the ideology. There was a
Yes.
whole lot of compounding issues there. I'm very respectful and appreciative of all religions. I think that it's beautiful that there are so many religions. I think there is so much richness in so many of the religions, you know, and that the fact that we have so many religions in this world. And I think that is, there really is so much complexity in that. And I think that's important. And I will also say that I think sometimes, unfortunately, like anything else, religion and other things, other constructs can be unfortunately used as tools, not always to help. Sometimes it ends up, you know, there may be good intentions, but sometimes it ends up becoming patriarchal or restrictive, and all the same issues. I mean, these issues can happen anywhere. It's not just in religion, of course. But I do, what you said resonates a lot, because frankly, it took a lot to, I mean, if you think about the home that I grew up in, tarot, like here growing up, so many things were apparently satanic. Tarot was satanic, like, you know, all these things were satanic. And it wasn't even just that they were evil. No, they were satanic. Like, so there were so many things that I needed to, there's, and I'm trying to recall the person's actual name. They're an artist called The Naked Pastor on Instagram. And they talk about deconstructing faith and really well, what is the thing that you actually have faith in, and find the truth, find the actual values in it. But where have there been unhealthy constructs put on top of it? And so I think it's an important thing to talk about, because I think this comes up quite a lot in the tarot community, where there are folks who were raised with specific religions that may not have been welcoming of tarot or open to tarot. And yet tarot actually, you know, has some connections and crosswalks with other religions. And so I think it really is an important discussion. And so I don't think it was a tangent. I think it actually totally flows, and you're going with the flow, and I love it.
Well, thanks. But like, and that's what I think too, when it, you know, sort of bringing it back to your deck, it was, you know, as I've got on this sort of tarot journey and seeing all different kinds of tarot, and seeing like, you know, like the actual, you know, RWS, and looking at the structure and what, you know, yes, Pamela Colin Smith drew from way back when, right? You know, had a very, like, it, even like if you think about like the movies and stuff like that you see when they talk about tarot, there's like a very sort of, what's the word, sort of stigma and stereotype as to what, you know, what exactly what it is.
They lay down the death card, everyone goes, woo. It's like, so the person's going to go through a major transformation.
Right. So like, you know, so, and that's where, and yeah, and you always sort of had this belief that tarot was a scary thing, you know, but now we sort of, you know, fast forward us now to the present, and, you know, where we are today, and there's so many different takes of the tarot, and what each of these sort of classic symbolisms, you know, really, really mean. And now you've taken it a step further, and you've added the you know, the elements and the work of like healing the chakras, and having that as a focus throughout the deck. And that is such a really refreshing sort of you know, take on it, that like now it's like, no, there's even more of a connection to the idea of spirituality and, you know, self-development, and how that all that brings that back around to maintaining a healthy and balanced lifestyle. And that, with that being the focus of the mind, and how connected that is to everything, the way the body works and how we function, and even just, you know, how we you know, as a society, you know, with, you know, sort of interacting with each other, and what all, you know, how that all sort of fits together, and what that all means. And it just sort of ties it up into a little bow to keep it, So so I like to, all the decks I have, like they have all their personalities. So they have, so some of the decks, especially like if it's clamshell or, where I feel like if you hold the deck a certain way, the box could possibly open. So I put things like color coordinated ribbons to match my deck, things like that, right? So, and then of course, my beautiful deck bag that, that, Lisa's wife, Peggy Papaz made from her, Etsy shop. So, and that idea and celebrating creativity and just, all of those things, it all sort of, it just all fits together. Right. And I think that, that's beautiful. Like, it was funny, like just even talking to my mom, the other day, and, sort of we were having this discussion again about COVID and how, what they're saying in the news, and, they're calling it, this is the great, instead of depression, it's the great resignation.
Oh, so yes, especially in the US, yes.
Right, leaving their jobs and, and looking, to, because they're tired of the workforce. So everybody's off and doing their own thing. And, how the fact that this pandemic has really sort of pushed people in that sort of direction, to take better care of themselves, having to be forced to do it, right? Because, you couldn't go to work. So what else were you going to do? Go crazy?
Well, and also just to have to kind of sit with your emotions, right? Yeah. That's not something that people often do. And I think we naturally all do know how to sit with our emotions. That I think we come into this world knowing how to do that. But then unfortunately, and particularly, and depending what society you live in and the kind of practices that you grow up learning, in a North American type of society, it's very much about the rational mind and all these kinds of things. Now, I'm a very pragmatic, rational person. Don't get me wrong. I love science. I'm grateful for it. And it's not only about being rational. We are not only rational creatures. Emotions are real. They are real. We know that energy is real. Like there are lots of things that we can't see that we know are real, like gravity. We know that's real. We know that our phones have batteries in them because guess what? Our phones keep working, but you can't see the battery, but clearly it's in there because your phone is on and working. It's that kind of idea, right? Where it's not just about it's not just all about hard materialism. I do respect there are people who are hard materialists, and that if that is what makes them happy, then I respect that. For myself and for people who love tarot, we tend to be folks who, there's a part of us that wants to go back to being comfortable with ourselves and being comfortable with our emotions. And that can feel scary, especially when we've gone through years of separating ourselves from our emotions, right? And that's exactly how we can end up holding unserving energies in our energy body, in our chakras, right? We experience something emotionally impactful. It may not have to even be like a big, huge, life impacting trauma, but if it affects us emotionally, we hold that in our body, right? And it can feel like a trauma. And it's just the way that in microaggression is just as impactful as outright racism, because it's still racism at its core, and it still is impactful, and we hold that in our body. And so it's a natural thing for us to want to separate ourselves from that feeling. The problem is if we stay separated from that feeling, we're actually separating ourselves from ourselves. Like we are becoming disaggregated. And so the idea of creating this deck was to use a system that I love. Like I love the system of tarot. It's very powerful. Every single card is an entire library. The cards are not flat with individual meanings. They are just so rich. And using that system to help people reconnect with themselves and to really start working through some of the stuff that is no longer serving them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, otherwise, like, you know, we end up in this continuous cycle, and then by the end of it all, it's like, well, what? That's it. Like, you know, that's that. There, you know, there has to be more, and there is more. You know, we just, you know, we get so caught up with, you know, what it means to sort of be a successful functioning person, you know, in life and in society, you know. So it's, you know, it's about, you know, the car, it's about the house, it's about the, you know, all of these things. And, you know, and I you know, I'm not at all where I thought I would be, you know, at this stage of my life. And you know, and the things that I've seen and the things that I've gone through, you know, has shaped me to the person that I am today. And oftentimes, you know, sort of looking back on things, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm satisfied with, you know, where I am. You know, there are a lot of things that I had expected to accomplish at this point that, you know, I haven't, or I thought I was on my way there, and then, you know, my world sort of just shattered all around me, and now it's like, okay, now what, right? And you know, and sort of just trying to sort of pick up the pieces of my life, so to speak, and sort of make something good out of it, right? But, you know, even with that, you know, and you know, it's you know, it's scary. The unknown is scary, not knowing where you know, you're gonna step off next. And but you know, having some sort of guidance along the way, you know, like these sort of not just stepping stones, if you will, that, you know, to help me sort of understand what it is that, you know, is happening around me, and how I can make the best of it, you know, not just for myself, but for those around me as well. Right.
And I think you make an important point on that, right? Because it's true. Lots of the time we have zero control over the circumstances that happen, but, you know, and sometimes our choices are limited, but we do always have some kind of choice, even if the choice is just within ourselves and how we regulate ourselves and how we try to rebuild ourselves and heal from it, right? Because, you know, sometimes our actual choices might be limited. Sometimes we have imposed more limitations than there might be, but there are also very real barriers and very real limitations that do exist. And sometimes it comes down to, you know, the one thing that you always have choice over is how you internally engage with yourself. That is the one thing you will always have choice over. There aren't, you know, no matter what someone else takes away from you or does to you, they can't actually, that is yours. That is yours. And that's why, and you know what, like I created the deck so that, I mean, people can read it it's a tarot deck. They can read it just like they read any tarot, but I also designed the guidebook in a way. But, you know, I designed the guidebook even in the way that, you know, if someone just wants to do like a single card reading or use it almost like an oracle, they can just pull a single card, go to the section in the book that talks about it, and there's a message in there. Right. So, and that's why I tried to design it that way, because it's like you said, sometimes you're trying to figure out where on earth you go next, and, you know, and trying to make things better for yourself and those around you. But where do you start? Right. So that was the intent, to try to, you know, give people a starting point from where they are, and knowing that the right card always comes up. The right card will always come up. Right. It's always the right one.
And, you know, sort of just getting back as you were talking about the guidebook, like, I mean, I really like the way that you have it. Like, it's pretty meaty.
It's thick, yeah.
it's pretty thick, and, you know, but it's so, like, it's so easy to follow. Like, just, you know, even somebody who may not be that, sort of versed in tarot can easily pick up the deck and use it and use it for spiritual growth without even knowing exactly what they're doing or what sort of any of it really means. If you know what it means, well then that's a bonus, and that's a bonus aspect. But even just for face value, like you open the book, you've got the actual the chakra that is symbolized in the card, right? Yeah. And then you connect it with planetary energy and things like that. But not only do you have the message, the overall sort of interpretive message that you put there, but you're also highlighting key phrases that sort of, and I like the way that you've done that, sort of what today, if you were to sort of put a fresh spin on it, what could these things mean in a positive way? Taking those traditional meanings and turning it into something with a fresh take, right? With a fresh eyes based on your experiences and probably other people's experiences and that sort of thing. But then also, and I guess I'm assuming that the suppressed key phrases are what would be the sort of, like if you were to do a reversal, right, on the card?
Yeah, so you could. So I think so there's so I talk about the chakra. First of all, I say what the card is in the guidebook, and then the chakra, the planetary energy, there's a chakra healing message. And then, yes, I've got vibrant key phrases, suppressed key phrases, and then traditional key phrases. So the suppressed, I mean, it really depends on how you read cards. For people who read upright and reversed, you could read the suppressed as reversed, absolutely. And other folks don't use reversals, but often you'll look at the book and you'll know exactly which key phrase is popping out to you as the thing in your mind, right? And so you just know. And then I have included traditional key phrases just for folks who are new to tarot and still learning. But the approach that I took on all of the key phrases and the meanings, it is from a place of empowerment, right? Because that's what I'm all about. I'm all about, helping people to heal themselves and empower themselves, right? To be just more connected to who they are. And so I pulled in everything. I mean, my own approach to reading tarot, because I am an experienced reader, is all, I take a choice-based approach. So I absolutely do believe you can do predictive readings for sure. But my take is always that it's not all like doom and gloom. And once, it's not fatalist, right? It's okay. The idea of doing any kind of predictive reading is to figure out, okay, so where are my choice points, right? If it looks like this is going to happen, okay, what are my resources? What are my strengths? What are my choices in how I want to move forward, right? But also, I take a Kabbalistic perspective to reading the tarot, because there is a whole Kabbalistic approach to reading tarot. And for the numerological perspective, I read both with conventional numerology as well as Kabbalistic numerology, because they're a little bit different. So I've incorporated all of that, but in a way where you literally don't need to know what any of that means, right? Because I wanted to make it so that a beginner who's like, I literally don't understand what you're saying, they can still pick up this guidebook and totally understand it. And so far it seems to work. One of my friends who supported the project on the Kickstarter never picked up a tarot deck before in their life, and they gave apparently very accurate readings to their mother and their sister using just the guidebook. So I'm like, yeah, nice. It worked.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, right? And that's exactly, it's sort of making it more accessible, and sort of, taking away that whole stigma of, ooh, tarot's evil, tarot's bad. Yeah. Like, no, like, and I remember having this discussion about, like, in everything in life that we experience, right? There's a good side and there's a bad side to it, right? And you can look at it that way with pretty much everything. Too much of a good thing it doesn't end up being a good thing, right? And then of course there's, the opposite of that. So like, I mean, what, and my mom is I like, she's in my head with all the cliches that are out there and all these sayings. And, it's like, what one, means for evil, the other one can take it away for good. Right. And it's like, well, that you could do that with tarot too. Right.
Oh,
So
yeah. And it really comes down to how are you using anything? It's like any skill or ability. And I mean, anything, any resource that you have, whether it's an internal or material resource, it really, how much there is or isn't, it's really more about, well, what do you do? What kind of steward are you being with whatever it is that you have? Right. And including your own energy and your own knowledge and, your courage with how you're willing to face, unserving limiting beliefs or scary things from the past and those old stories in your head and other people's voices that always come up in your head, when you're facing a decision. And, it really just the courage to be a good steward of all that and recognize that you are your greatest investment.
yeah, absolutely. And so you've got quite a bit of spreads in here.
Yeah, I have some spreads in there. I also did a meditation and a ritual in there.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I was like, wow, like this is a one-stop shop.
Yeah, well, and I did also create a deck interview spread specifically for chakra healing tarot, and I shared that on Instagram. Well, it's on my website too, but yeah, I shared that, and people were messaging me saying, oh my goodness, this deck is super honest. Like it told me exactly what's happening with that intro spread.
Yeah, right. And so like, and it's funny because I'm looking through some of the spreads right now, and of course it's like, the empowered action spread, and I'm looking at that, and right away I'm thinking, well, yeah, well that would pair well with an affirmations deck. And then I'm looking at the healing wound spread, and I'm like, yep, that would work perfect with this deck. And then if you were to add in the reclaim oracle, then I'm just
right.
going through them, and I'm like, like there's it's a wonderful deck. You did a really great job on this. That's what
thank you.
Thank you. So beautiful. And like, just like the presentation, like the box, and then even the little touches, like the thank you card at the back, like,
yes,
and I was watching Jonathan Daly's, I was watching Jonathan Daly's interview with you, and I was like, yeah, like, and so listening to you with the explanation on how you came up with that, with the characters on the card, like, I'm like, I've never seen that before, so like that is so beautiful. And yeah, like, you could take the card out, or you can keep it in, right? Like it's just another sort of reminder of to be grateful for what we have in this life, and what what we can receive and what we have to offer, and it's just really, really well done. So like, I know, sort of in our discussion, you've been kind of sort of talking, about, the sort of a little bit of the creative process and, and stuff like that. But where did the idea for this deck actually come from? Like, what sort of started this to say, this is what I'm doing, I'm creating this deck, and this is why?
Yes. So there was a period, I guess it would be about 2.5 years ago now. I was in my divination, because I have daily like sacred practice and connection time, right? So there's a lot of different sacred practices that I do, and meditation. And so it was about 2.5 years ago in, I guess, spring of, I guess that would be, was it 2009 to 19? Is that 18? 19, 2019. I was sitting, in meditation, and I just kept feeling like I'm supposed to create something to do with tarot. And at that point, I was thinking, I didn't even consider a deck. Like, that was not in the realm of my thinking, right? Because I would never have thought that I could do something like that. And so I was thinking, okay, well, I mean, I write a lot of blog posts. And so I was trying to, do some divination around it. And I'm like, should I, write blog posts about tarot? And all the questions I kept trying to ask to understand what it was about tarot that I was supposed to create. I think my guides and my ancestors were like, she's really not getting it. Because when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, they were basically trying to lovingly whack me over the head with a metaphysical 2x4. And I just wasn't getting it. I'm like, am I supposed to write a book about it? Like, because I do a lot of writing. Like, I've written blog posts, for quite some time. And I thought it was something to do with that. And then I actually had a remote healing session with Rachel Stavis. Amazing author, by the way. Really, really good at and I definitely recommend her book, Sister of Darkness, in terms of helping people to understand sometimes some of like the darker or heavier energies that are not their own. I only deal with what's your own, like your chakras, it's your energies, it's your own thing. But she's really good in terms of providing insights into other, negative energies that can affect us. But anyway, I had won a remote healing session with her, and I'd followed her for ages prior to that. And so she connected with my guides, and she's like, you're supposed to create a tarot deck. I'm like, me? She's like, yeah. And they're saying they've been trying really hard to get through to you. And I was like, oh, I get it now. But there was still part of me that was like, I'm going to create a deck. Okay, that's and it took a little bit to get used to, because to me the idea of creating a physical product just seemed so hard. It seemed like something I had never done before, because I never created a physical product before. And I thought, how on earth am I going to do this, and where do I start? And I don't even, but I thought, okay, this is great, at least I understand what my marching orders are now. And so I thought about, okay, what is it that I want to do? What do I care about? What do I love? Like, I'm a Reiki master, and I love helping people connect to their bodies, like the transformative real life impacts that I've seen people experience through Reiki healing, and other modalities has been incredible. And I thought, is there some way for me to help, people get connected? And then I also thought, I'm all about empowerment and self-healing. Like, that's literally what my blog is all about, is self-healing and empowerment. And so I thought, maybe I can somehow combine these things and make a chakra deck. So I started, doing a bunch of research on chakra decks, and I found, a couple existed. And then it was really a case of figuring out, how do I figure out these correspondences? And I mean, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now, but that's how I landed on, I'm going to make a chakra deck. And I knew I wanted it to be about healing. And so it was a chakra healing deck. And so that was the initial, how it came about. But yes, it's basically my guides and ancestors got so frustrated with me that I'm not getting it, that they helped me to win this remote session with Rachel Stavis, who's like translating and saying, your guides are basically tired of repeating themselves. You really need to make this deck.
Oh man, it's so fun. So anyways, if you haven't seen Miraculous, I think you should watch it, because it's like, you should definitely check it out. Like, it is a cartoon, but like, it's still so much more than that. It's so much, you really dive into it, as are most Disney movies anyways, right?
Yes.
But like, it's, and so the aha moment I had the other day when I was watching it, and I'm like, you're seeing all the little magical creatures, and I'm like, they're spirit guides. That's right. Like, that's
that sounds so cute.
because the thing is, so I think there was a fresh take in one of the more recent episodes where I guess the main character, right? She's talking to what considered her Kwame, like for her ladybug that's attached to the ladybug charm, what her spirit guide is for that. Yep. And then like, so she's sort of become now the I forget what let's say the guide or whatever. So she's the one who holds on to all of the charms, like she's the keeper of the charms now, where she was just once a user. Now she's actually the keeper that has all the charms in her possession. Right?
Speaking of stewardship, we were just talking about being a good steward.
Yeah, right. And then so I guess she's now realizing that she can't keep a relationship because she's got all of these even though she wants to fall in love and she wants to be have a partner, but she can't do it because she has all these responsibilities. She's the guardian of all the Kwamis and the charms and all of that stuff. So she has this heavy sort of spiritual burden on her. And she's all sad about the fact that, she can't date this guy that she wants to date or whatever. And then, and she's like, I'm so sad. And they're like, all the Kwamis, they're like floating around. And they're like, what can we do for you? And she's like, I just need a hug. And then right? And then you see them all, and they're so cute. They all gather around her. She's lying in her bed, and they all go, to like give her a hug. Aww. And then they shoot to the camera, like, what would be the outer perspective? And you just see her lying in her bed, and she's just like hugging herself. That's what you're seeing. So you can't actually see the Kwamis.
Right. Yes.
She can see them, as she's talking to them and whatever, and she's the keeper, but nobody else on the outside. If you're not a chosen one, I guess you can't, or born into it, you can't see them. So, and so that was, that was the thing where that was the aha moment for me. And I'm like, so when I'm lonely and I'm and I'm talking to myself and I'm basically saying, I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I'm doing that self-talk, right? Yeah. So now I'm like, in a way, that's my spirit guides looking out for me and giving me that word of encouragement, and I'm like, so they've been there all this time.
Exactly. Yes, they have. That was
I'm just talking to myself like an idiot.
No, but you know what? Also, I think there's nothing wrong with talking to yourself. There's nothing wrong because, you could be talking to yourself now, but you could also be talking to your higher self, or maybe your higher self is talking to your current self. Maybe you're talking to loving ancestors, right? Maybe you're talking to, the other loving divine that you may have a trusting relationship with. Maybe you're talking to pure love.
Right. And so, and so that was the thing that I sort of, it intrigued me, to the show, and that just sort of, develop that more of a love for the show that, has, grown further than it's such a cute show and, yay, and let's be do-gooders. Well, it's way more in depth than that.
It sounds much more, it sounds like there's a whole lot of complexity there.
There's a whole lot more in there, right? So, so of course, what did that do? Well, that triggered me to go back to the very first season, watch it all over again. So I'm just, oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so, okay, so back to your deck, like you didn't draw this yourself. You had an artist that you worked with.
I did find an artist. Yes. So that was one of the key pieces where when I realized, okay, I'm making a deck. I have artistic ability, but I could already see the images in my head that I wanted in the deck. And I'm like, no, this will be a stick person deck. And that already exists. So I need to find someone who has the skills to do this. And so
you certainly can't put a stick for your deck out and charge $70.
Well, and you know, I mean, there is a stick person deck out there, and I think that's amazing, but it wasn't what I wanted to create for this. And so I found a local Toronto artist, Ella Mazur, and Ella created all of the art. So what I did is that I wrote all the descriptions, and what the creative process would be is that she would read the description and put together a very rough sketch, and she would usually put together 2 or 3 different options, right, to send to me. And because she might be thinking, okay, do you want this kind of angle, is this kind of what you're going for, like, before spending a lot of time in a detailed drawing. So I would look at them and I might say, you know what, I love option 2. Or I might say, I really like this aspect of option 1 and this aspect of option 3. Is there a way to combine them? So then she would go back and do up a draft. And so basically it was a lot of back and forth. It was a very like iterative process. And so then I would say, like, yes, this, this is great. Or can we make this, can we change this just a little bit, or can we add some of this? And then she would go back and then come back with the colored in version, because she did all of the outlines in pen and ink, and then she colored them in digitally. So and then she would send me the colored in version of the card, and then if I was good with it, then we were all set to go. Any other tweaks that were needed, she would make, and that is what we did for the entire deck. And it was such an amazing process to work with Ella. Really amazing artist, local artist. The style of art was exactly perfect for what I wanted. And Ella also had some really great creative ideas for that she really brought to the table. And there were a number of things where I was not specific about, I want an Asian character in this card, and I wasn't specific like that, but I did provide a list of artist notes. And some of those included, because to me, diversity was very important for this deck.
Yes.
I'm mixed myself, and I live in a very multicultural city, and I really wanted the deck to reflect that. For me, I wanted the deck to look a little bit more like for the folks in it to look like the world I see around me. And so Ella would incorporate the diversity, and sometimes we'd have some back and forth on that, but I really, she understood from the get-go how important it was for me for there to be diversity in the deck, and even in terms of gender diversity, right? Like, the Lovers card and quite a number of the cards, there are people that the gender expression and identity is not necessarily obvious, and that was very intentional. I was very specific about gender expression, and there were some cards where I was specific about the background that I wanted someone to have, but there were other cards that I otherwise said, I said, just please make sure that there is a good mix of diversity. And she did such a good job in reflecting diversity of people in a meaningful way, right? For example, to make a character look Asian, she didn't just create all the same features that you might, because this sometimes happens where someone might create a character and that is how they draw people, but it might look very like it may look very European, and then they just color the person a different color, but their face structure might not be any different, for example. But she did a really good job of really honoring the diversity of backgrounds that there are.
So would you say that, like, she had more or less creative freedom, and then as she did it, then you were like yay or nay or whatever? Like, is that
yes, I definitely, yeah, it's funny because in my day job, I'm a manager, and my approach in my day job is that I'm not a micromanager. I want to see you do your best work, and so I will provide the structure and guidance and direction I need for you to do that. But I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do something. Here's what we need to achieve, and let's see what you can create from that. And it was a similar approach with Ella. Like, Ella brought so much value and contribution and advice and experience and wisdom to the table, and I was very grateful for that.
So like the cover art and stuff, that was all her?
Yeah, so we tried a few times with the cover art. I did suggest that it might be nice to make it feel like we were inside a cave, because for the Ace of Wands, how there is a character about to walk into the cave in the sacred mountain. I thought, yeah, well, what if we take the picture from the world card, but instead of having the character, have it be like we're a character who's standing in a cave with crystals, and we're looking out at this scene, like we're entering into this world. So but then I didn't provide how to include the crystals or anything like that, or how to make the different colors, how to add the colors in. But I did provide, I did ask for that particular cover. We had gone back and forth over what the cover might look like. Like, Ella had, also created some other ideas, which is again how we did the whole process with the cards also.
Yeah. So like, okay, so like the Fool, for example, like, did you like the positioning and everything, and the fact that the colors are coming from the divine, and and it's sort of lighting up, the areas in the body, like was
so that was in the description. So the description, so for the I was very clear about the description itself in terms of what should be visible in the card. Like, I did say that it needed to, that they're in the, because each of the so the arcana and each of the suits, they're in a different physical location, right? So for the majors, they're on the in the mountaintop on what would have been sacred temple ruins, right? And so this character I had written would be standing, by a structure, and would be able to see the water, the enchanted forest, the clouds, and the mountains, and that there would be a rainbow coming down from the cloud to, and that all chakras were visible. Where Ella really brought, that, for example, the extra expertise that Ella brought was that she was able to make the chakras look like they glow, and like all the cards, something is glowing, right? Like, so if you notice anything, clouds, like the clouds have this beautiful glowing gradient, or like sunlight streaming through them. The water, it looks like the water sparkles, right? The chakras all glow. She created that, right? And making the rainbow, like it actually looks like a rainbow, like you can kind of see through it, right? It's effervescent. And so, that is that's the extra expertise that Ella brought that I had not written in. Try to make the water sparkle. I didn't write try to make the water sparkle. She brought that. I didn't know that you could make water look like it was sparkling.
Right. Well, and so, and as I stare more at the card, right, and I'm looking, and I'm like,
oh, and the sorry, I just realized the volcano, right?
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
So I had said that there should be sparks coming up from the sacred mountain, but she figured out how to make it basically look like a rainbow, and just brought that extra level of magic to it.
Yeah. Well, like, like when I look at the card, the interpretation is like, as the way, who, however you want to call it, whether, specifically God, or, the universe, or whatever. For me, it's God, right? He we're his creation. And, the gifts that we are given in this life, it comes from him. And then of course, it travels through our body, and then what we do with it in our own experiences and whatever. And like to me, the symbolism here with like the volcano, or what to me looks like a volcano, as we use and utilize our free will and the skills that we acquire, through what is given to us, and what we do with it through our life, is what makes the world go round, or makes the world erupt, right? Essentially, right? So that's like it, and it's subtle. It's, you just like, you know what I mean? Like it's subtle, but it has such a huge impact. Like, if you really look closely, like you can see the little speckles, which, sort of signify that, it's like erupting here, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's things like that. Like, it's like, you don't actually get that in, at least when I look at, traditionally, what I remember of what the Fool card looks like in the average tarot deck. You don't really get that. Usually the person's on a cliff and they're about to like jump off, right? Like, that's like, now I'm leaping into, the unknown, where, like, it's, yes, there's a certain level of unknown, because we have various gifts and we don't necessarily, through our experience, we learn what our gifts are, but like, yeah, like that's the impact we're making on this world as individuals. So I really like that. I mean, the artwork is just really, really beautiful. And
Ella did such an amazing job. I was so grateful that she was willing to take the project on, because honestly, it's daunting for an artist, because the deck alone is 78 cards. That's 78 pieces of art that someone is creating, as well as the additional things, right? Because I asked her to make the box, and even though it is the same image for the box and the guidebook, they're actually two separate products that she is designing, right? Because they have different templates. And then there were the stickers that she created, there's the bookmarks, and that's a lot for an artist to take on. And yes, you're paying them, but that's a very big project, and it's time that that for them it may also limit other projects that they're taking on. So I was just so grateful that she was willing to take it on.
Yeah, this is like, not to say, it's just so funny, because what I'm gonna say, it's like, well, no, like, I want to say, well, it's truly a work of art, but all tarot decks are works of art, right?
They are.
Like, it's just, like, the way that, I sort of, I view the images, and it's like, it just makes the connection for me really easy and really, really simple, right? Like, and it's, and you just, like, I look at the deck, and like, this is a deck that I would look forward to working with. Like, like, not even, like, not to say like I don't enjoy working with all of my tarot cards, but like,
of course,
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's, hey, here's a sort of, I don't know what I want to say, comfortable way on giving me the messages that I need to hear, whether it be good or bad. I'm not gonna look at a card and be like, okay, well, I know what that means, but it's still scary to look at. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's exactly why I created it.
Scary, but they are, it's like, it's kind of like, okay, yeah. So this is what the deal is. Like, it's a comforting friend that is just like, you know what, I'm here for you, non-judgmental in any sort of way. This is what's real. This is what, is the reality of things. And, we're going to do it, and let's move forward and find the best way possible to do it. Right. Like, it's just, that's what, that's sort of what seems to be the essence of this deck. Right. you know, because like, it's not to say like they're not dark images. It's just, it's done in a way that is
safe,
gentle, safe, right?
and gentle.
Like,
Yeah.
right. And highlighting, you know, like seeing, you know, the different chakras as sort of different categories to, you know, our skills and things like that, right? And it's like, so here is what, you know, you may need to work out, and highlighted in it is, you know, the areas, the categories that you need to sort of access those particular skills in. And if you don't have them, or if they're weakened or whatever the case may be, or they need repairing, well, this is, you know, where you know, you should look at and probably work at repairing those, or, you know, developing them, or whatever the story is that needs to be done, right? Like, so, you know, it's yeah, I'm kicking myself for not, you know, initially backing the campaign, but at the same time, you know what? It's all good. It reached into my hands when it needed to, and, you know, like, and how it needed to, and, you know,
Yes.
so, you know, and it's local, so it didn't take that long.
It's true.
I didn't have to be one of those suckers waiting forever and ever. Like, you know, you sent it out 2 days later. Okay, got my tag.
Yay, camera post. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Or I could have just, if it wasn't for COVID, I probably just jumped in my car and just come get it.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, and it's always, it's nice when you can support, you know, local, and you know,
absolutely.
It's just a reminder too, like COVID, it was, you know, it's just a reminder of how important it is to support, you know, those in our community, right? Because
yes.
you know, COVID really took it took a toll, and it unfortunately put a lot of people out of work, businesses under, you know, and really, unless you were really a big giant, you didn't really have a chance of survival.
It was so hard for people to pivot, right? And this is that was definitely a factor when so Ella and I had met in January of 2020, and that's when we signed the contract. And she had just started working on the deck. And I mean, she does a lot of work, a lot of murals, a lot of interiors for small businesses. And as soon as the global health crisis occurred, suddenly she actually lost, there were some businesses that said, okay, we don't know what's happening, or wow, we suddenly have no revenue, we need to put things on hold. And so there was a time when, this was one of her primary projects for some time. And thankfully, thank goodness, as time went on, then she was able to get a lot of those projects back, which was wonderful. But absolutely, and I mean, the way that it works too with artists is that Ella, as part of our agreement, Ella gets commission for the sales of the deck. And so it is, it's supporting two small business owners, right?
Yeah, right. Like I think that's the one of the best things of, for me, like discovering, maybe the best and worst things, I don't know, depends on how you look at it, of discovering the tarot world, because I love books, I love cards, I'm a collector of literature, and of all kinds, and and having that physical book in my hand has always been something that I really enjoyed, seeing illustrations and pictures, and especially growing up, children's books and things like that, right? Yeah. And then the written word is just, it's so beautiful. So tarot, you're basically sort of combining both worlds. You've got images that you can look at, that you can see visually, and that is where, for me, I love a deck with a very good guidebook, right? And
20,000 words, 20,000 of those written words.
Right?
pages. It's so long, but honestly, I was like, well, I'm not shortening it. This is what it is.
No, and
And it's not,
you know what?
it's 2
Thank
pages.
you for not
like,
shortening it, right? Because so many people, they do that, and it's and there's so many, and then this is my sort of personal preference and stuff like that, right? But there's so many beautiful decks out there, and then and then I'll see a deck and I'll like it, and then I'm like, but it has no guidebook. So then I'm like, so what am I supposed to do? Like, I mean, yeah, I can, I'm not like an expert to that point where I can say that, oh yeah, just, I can look at it and be like, yeah, I know exactly what this is telling me, right? Like, I mean, yes, there are some decks that are like that really sort of, I find that can be very intuitive that way. And
yes, there are definitely. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there are some where, no, at the first bat, I'm not really understanding what this is, and that's where I want to dive into the guidebook. I want to see where was the artist sort of, interpretation, what were they seeing, and sort of getting that sort of understanding, and that's too, I think, where I like the variety of having different tarot decks to work with, and
yes,
and getting to dive into seeing a fresh take of a traditional card, especially nowadays where everybody and their mama is making a tarot deck.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's, and on one hand, you can kind of see that as, well, that's in your face sort of mass consumption, but at the same time, it's refreshing because you're getting to see all kinds of sides of different people and their interpretation, and and how the mind works. And it's very fascinating because we can both look at the same image and get two different perspectives on it, right? And that is beautiful, right? A picture, can tell 1,000 words, right?
Exactly.
You sent how many thousands of words are in here? Did you say
20,000 words? 20,000 words. Yes.
So you sent 20,000 words for 78 images.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, even then, it was really hard because every single card has 2 pages. That was a limit I had to keep myself to. It was hard to stay to 2 pages a card. Like, honestly, I could go on. I could probably write 20,000 words about every card. So it was really hard to stay with 2 pages a card. But I think, something else you said about, the having different takes on decks. I really do. I love it, and I'm grateful that we're in an era where there are so many different options for decks, because not every deck is going to be right for every person, right? Like, it's just like, nobody has to own all of the books, but own as many books as work for you and that resonate with you and that help you to see the world from different perspectives, right? And when it comes to tarot, it also depends on how you read. Like, I regularly read with multiple decks at the same time, right? And it's specifically exactly what you said. It's about perspectives, right? I will be asking the same question, but I want to hear 5 or 7 different perspectives on the same issue. And it never surprises me that they're not the same. They're never the same cards that come up, but they're all different themes, different lenses on exactly the same issue. And they always are cohesive and congruent. And that's exactly it, right? And so have people having the opportunity to find something that resonates with them, I think, is really great, because some of the more traditional decks, maybe they just don't resonate for some people. For some people, even some of the more traditional decks some folks actually find triggering, just because some of the more traditional imagery, for example, for the Hierophant, will show someone who looks like a religious figure, and for some folks that is a triggering thing, right?
Like Pope John Paul or Pope Francis or whichever pope is that running at the time, that's kind of what the Hierophant looks like in traditional decks, right? And it's like, okay, well, what about those people that don't connect with the idea of the Pope and things like that? Does that mean that the tarot can't work for them? Like,
or does that card then does it become a caricature of what it actually can mean? Because when they see it, then all they can think of is something that doesn't resonate with them, right? And so then does it become a barrier to them? And I'm not putting down the Hierophant card. I have lots of traditional decks that have a traditional Hierophant. And I am personally comfortable with that because, you know, that's where I'm coming from. I have done a lot of healing, you know, from my own, you know, upbringing. And so I'm comfortable with, you know, with a whole variety of decks, but for some folks, that may be a barrier for them. And so, you know, I think it's so good that people have options where, you know, they can find something that really just works for them.
Absolutely. And just even, it's even just a sort of a reminder too about, you know, the greatness of, you know, staying open-minded and having, you know, having that openness. Like, I mean, you know, it's funny because there's another lovely YouTuber that I watch from time to time. Her name is Bonnie, Old School Mermaid, and she recently did a topic on her channel where she was talking about, you know, the consumption of tarot and the idea on diversity and like this sort of like the latest demand in you know, when it comes to new decks and stuff like that. And everybody's like demanding that they want to see a deck that's diverse. And yes, there's a, you know, we do. And I will definitely agree that, you know, especially knowing what tarot was like way back when it, you know, when tarot first sort of started, and, you know, and the representation of that. But, you know, you have that, and then now you have all these different I meant to say diverse decks. It came out like that. You know, where, you know, you have all these different, you know, representations of people and things like that. And you know, and that's great. And we want that, right? We want to, as, you know, a society, and as you know, especially living in Toronto, being so multicultural and things like that, we want decks that are going to be representative of, you know, who we are as a community, you know, where, you know, we are in our present day and things like that. But also being mindful and accepting that we all have different points of view. And as creators, we all have different ways we see things as well. So, you know, and as somebody puts out the deck, and if their reflection of, you know, of thing is specific to whatever their vision is or whatever their culture is, you know, and they're putting out a deck, that doesn't mean that there's not a place for it. There's a place for it. And being mindful of that and remembering and welcoming that. Like, every deck doesn't have to be diverse. And I think the beauty of creators is that we all are diverse. And as we all are diverse, and we have our very diverse ways of thinking and things like that, and we bring, you know, and we produce it, you know, and you know, and then as, you know, consumers, we, you know, consume that and stuff like that. That is, you know, that's a beautiful thing. And, you know, and to me, the idea of diversity is not just in the fact that I'm having a deck that's diverse with the amount of people, but I'm also diverse in my thinking and in my open-mindedness to consume other things that aren't necessarily a reflection of me, but have messages that have some sort of teachings that do resonate with me. So whether or not I see myself in that deck, what does that deck or what does that have to teach me? That I can learn, right?
I think that's so wise. I think that's so wise. Yeah.
And even if we're, you know, as we, you know, are people who have been, you know, reincarnated, if that, you know, if that's what you believe, or you don't believe, or whatever. The idea is you probably, you know, I probably, in the last life I lived in, I probably was not a Black woman. You know, I could have been an Indian man for all you know. I don't know, right? Like, I mean, that's something that, of course, if I, want to do the work on that and dive deeper into past lives and things like that, I can come to learn, right? But, knowing that, maybe I could be, possibly Indian, whether it be East Indian or whether it be Native Indian or whatever the story is, the idea of that culture and what they practice, and learning about that, maybe something that interests me. So, a diverse deck isn't necessarily going to be what I need. It's going to be something that's more specific to that particular sort of culture, right?
Oh, sorry.
Being accepting of that, right?
Yes. And I think something it's quite close to my heart is that not all diversity can actually be represented in a physical medium, right? I mean, it's a visual medium, and there's lots of diversity I can't show here, right? If you just look at a still picture of me, you have no idea that I'm neurodivergent, and I'm neurodivergent, and it's quasi-invisible, quasi-visible. Most people don't notice that, because I have Tourette syndrome plus, so it means I have Tourette syndrome and a few other neurological comorbidities, which means that there are other neurological disorders that have similar neurology to Tourette. So I have multiple neurological disorders, but most people have no idea, or they only notice sometimes. Meanwhile, if you just look at a picture of me, you don't have any idea of that, right? So I do think that, I'm grateful to live in an era where we can get all sorts of, diverse decks, and diverse meaning, maybe within themselves, as well as a variety of different decks for different perspectives. But, I think it's also important to remember there's so much more to people than just basically what we look like, right? It is an important part of ourselves, and our expression is important, but there's a lot more diversity than that alone. But listen, thank you so much for having me on. I am starting to get quite hungry, so I need to go eat some dinner.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So just, quickly to wrap up, are we going to see an oracle deck that might go with this? Like,
people keep asking me, I keep getting so many questions. They're like, you're going to make an oracle? So, I'm thinking I've got ideas floating around, just because so many people have been asking, and I really loved the whole process of making a deck. It's not easy to make a tarot deck, I will tell you that, especially if you're starting with because there are different kinds of decks, right? Like you can do like clone style decks, or everything takes effort, but if you're starting with like an idea that is you're starting from scratch, basically it's a very, very involved process. The entire process is very involved, and you're trying to do everything yourself as an individual person. So despite all that, I loved the deck making process, as chaotic as it was. But I would definitely make another deck. I don't have specific ideas or plans yet, but I have some ideas floating around. And at this point, people just keep asking about an oracle deck. So I guess next I should start thinking about an oracle deck.
Well, people keep asking. What? And it's funny though, because even though it is a tarot, it does. It's well rounded. That like it can be used as an oracle as well, right? But, we love to consume, don't we? So
and oracles are different, right? Like there is a very different feel to oracles, and the kind of structure that you take in thinking about how you construct how you pull together a deck. There's all different ways of doing oracles, right? And oracle in some ways almost more challenging than tarot, because tarot is an established system. You just have to know which school you're going with. Are you going with more, the Golden Dawn Thoth kind of school? Are you going with a Rider-Waite-Smith, or are you going with, a Marseille? Or maybe you're doing there's a lot of like combo decks, but really it's going to be some variation of those three systems. But for oracle, it could be any kind of system. Maybe you have some kind of internal structure, maybe you don't. Do you have words on the front, or do you just have pictures and then you look up the words in a book? You know, there's so many different kinds of
Exactly.
options. So it almost makes it like more, you know, more of an exciting challenge to think about of, you know, what could that look like?
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for this. And I mean, like, it's like a treasure box. Like the artwork inside. Like, are you kidding? Like, this is it. Like, it literally is a treasure box. Like when you open it, it's so beautiful. And you know what? I'm thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this into, you know, into the world, and, you know, sharing your vision with us. And just I cannot wait to see what more you have to come. And you're a Toronto woman, so
Yes,
yay.
I am.
So excited because, you know, of course, you know, we're all over the place, right? And there's so many wonderful people all over the world, but
Yes.
you know, to know that I'm, you know, sharing my city with somebody else and who is so beautiful that I actually, you know, got to meet and you know, and have this beautiful chat with. Thank you so much for, you know, giving me that opportunity, and just, you know, sharing your you with the world and with us. And
Oh,
thank you. And
Thank
like I
you.
said, I can't wait to see what more you come out, and I hope that, you know, we can join for another chat again soon sometime. So
I would love that. I would love that. And thank you so much for having me on. And it's just so lovely to chat and connect with you. And yes, I'd be very happy to have another chat.
yay. So, you know, I just want to wish you all the best, and continue living and listening and learning and teaching and just everything. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love it.
Yes, thanks.
All right.